Welcome back to episode 92 of the Weekly Tech Rant with me, Jay.
And me, Carl.
Well, we are a couple of days behind schedule. We've given this show out and in the can, as it were. But that's just due to, I think, the pressures of life and or work commitments.
Definitely.
But, I would say, it was caused by the heat wave. It's been a technical fault due to the heat in the UK and
melted
other places.
Our equipment.
Yes, cough, cough, nudge, wink, wink. So we are back for episode 92, and this week we have a bit of a, well, I want to say a packed show. We've got the usual tech news with an interesting story there, which is outside of the kind of usual stuff, and then what I can only describe as a tsunami of AMD news and updates following, was it their
financial analyst day,
yeah, and the Tech Rant rumor mill, of course, is back for a little stint following its, I guess, rest after WWDC last week, where we can talk about a couple of things that may or may not, appeared, and some things that are coming. But then, I guess, in the interest of getting this show on the road, given the amount of stuff we need to talk about, Carl, we should probably kick off. Do you think?
Definitely. So, first out the bat. Ouch, it's gonna hurt. So, apparently Taiwan has put some export bans on chips going to Russia and Belarus. Obviously, Russia and Belarus have kind of invaded Ukraine, and they've been banned from a lot of things. So they're banned from US tech, so there's no AMD or Intel chips. They've been banned from using US tech to produce their own chips, that kind of fabrication stuff. But now Taiwan has waded in. And wow, they might as well just have banned them outright, but they've kind of given them a hope and then pulled it away. So Taiwan have banned them from using anything faster than 25 megahertz, which is the i386 kind of territory.
Well, I was going to say, I think one of the equivalent, wasn't it? It basically was, the high end 386. So basically, like late 1980s was the equivalent.
But then they've also said what? So anything with 5 gigaflops or higher performance, which isn't much to today. Anything with an arithmetic logic unit with more than 32 bits wide. Anything with an external interconnect with more than 2.5 megabytes a second.
God.
Anything with more than 144 pins. This is very specific. And anything with basic gate propagation delay of less than 0.4 nanoseconds. So they basically just cut them off.
Yeah, they like you say, short of an outright ban, they've almost had, right, what can we make this to make this the most funny thing ever?
What they can actually make.
Yeah, how can we do this so that it's so awkward? Basically, as you say, they've returned the Russian chip availability to the late 1980s, haven't they? And Belarus, they should add as well there to just ensure that they're both caught up.
I don't think they can even buy a Raspberry Pi Zero.
No, I don't think they could.
Have Wi-Fi, and that can do more than 2.5 megabytes a second, so they can't even buy a Raspberry Pi Zero.
And it's faster than 25 megahertz as well, isn't it? So
it is,
I mean, this is interesting. So on the back of that, of course, Russia is now trying to move a lot of its homegrown industry to some of the chips that are made there. So such as I think they're called Elbrus and the Baikal processors. So these processors, I was having to read about them. So these processors are designed, in country through their own technology processes, if you will. And it is the Elbrus is an 8 or Elbrus-8S is a 28 nanometer 8-core CPU, which was developed by the Moscow Center of Spark SPARC Technologies. And they started designing and working on this chip back in 2014. And it's designed for workstations and servers, and it can support up to 32 processors on a single board. Now, I mean, off the bat of it, sounds like a great chip, doesn't it, already? Here's where you still are in 2014. So, the chip has 8 cores. It does support 64-bit. It has binary capability with Intel 86 and 64-bit.
Binary compatible,
Yeah. So it can run Windows XP and Windows 7, apparently, according to the wiki page, which I thought was funny. It only clock rate is 1.3 gig. It supports DDR3.
Oh, blimey.
And it has an L1 cache, 120 KB L1 cache, a 512 L2 cache, and 16 meg L3 cache shed across. Now they did do an updated one, which was the 8SV, which again was 8 cores, 28 nanometers again, and that was 1.5 gig. But it supported DDR4, DDR4 2400 piece, so it's 64 gig per processor. Now you'd think, okay, that's not too bad. It's not terrible, but apparently it is awful. According to Sberbank, the large Russian biggest national bank, who now term themselves as Sber, and they have their own infrastructure arm called Esper Infra. And apparently, according to several reports, they evaluated the chips last year. After the bans that came in, following the initial Crimean War, where Russia tried to annex, there was a sort of an export ban on several technologies, if you recall. And one of those meant that they weren't allowed to pick up or buy the AMD Epics or Xeons to replace them.
Right.
So they kind of started to evaluate the Elbrises and move across to them as well. So the Elbrises, that binary translation, the Baikal Electronics do an ARM-based SoC, so they're kind of equivalent. Equivalent to Western technologies. But apparently the results were disappointing. Apparently they cited insufficient memory, slow memory, few cores, low frequency, and none of the functional requirements have been met. Apparently it cannot keep up and is incredibly weak compared to the Intel Xeon Cascade Lake, said spokesperson for Server Infrastructure during the partner conference back in, I think it was in December 21. And apparently they were just saying it cannot compete whatsoever. It just compete against industry standards and any of the requirements the bank had that couldn't work. So they were trying to deploy it against functional testing. So they have 44 tests that they can do what Sberbank needs. Synthetic testing, PG Bench, so post-SQL testing, and application testing using Java. Apparently it was just terrible. It just could not cope. They are, I think one of the things was that the bank says at this stage last year, they could not deploy Everest machines into our ecosystem, but we were pleased to see it worked. I think that's the statement.
I mean, it booted. That's what we're saying, yeah?
But they're years behind. This is, by doing this, they are absolutely years behind here, aren't they? I mean, Taiwan's point is quite clever in doing that. China also was quite upset, weren't they? Because they issued a statement, accusing them of chasing clout and grandstanding with the new export ban. But
they did.
Given the situation between Taiwan and China, I mean, let's be quite honest, that's hardly...
That's not surprising. They're going to take a dig at anything, weren't they? I mean, also to go along with that, it wasn't just all those requirements on the chips. Taiwan also banned the export of chip-making equipment as well.
That's what I mean. So it's regardless whether you're going to buy the actual chips, you can't make the things, is it? So,
no, you can't make them anyway.
Yeah. They are done. They are absolutely done here in that sense. Because at some point in the near future, they're going to run out of this stuff. And this is not just in terms of commercial computing, isn't it? This is also in the military, the arms industry, because precision weaponry needs chips, needs circuitry, doesn't it?
It's even more fundamental than that. The whole communications network.
Well, yeah, exactly. This is going. The knock-on effects of this is going to last for a long, long time.
Yeah.
And it's. I don't know whether, whether there is a way back here for Russia in terms of some of this technology bans, because I think at this stage it's more likely that China's going to cover some of the export bans that were put in by the Trump administration than Russia getting some of the stuff. But it's crazy. But let's be honest, given the state of the world at the moment and the continued Russian aggression, it's probably fair. But that's just my opinion. I can't state.
Indeed.
Anyway, talking of chips then, and ARM then. So we've talked at length, haven't we, in this show about the ARM debacle, I think we should call it, because that's pretty much what it is, isn't it?
Well, yeah.
Following the collapse,
the whole NVIDIA, everything,
following that collapse of that NVIDIA acquisition, which was around 66 billion US. So SoftBank apparently are going to IPO, aren't they? Plan to list on the Nasdaq. But there's
not the London Stock Exchange.
No, it apparently is the Nasdaq. Apparently,
Okay.
So given that ARM is based in the UK, was previously listed on the FTSE and the Nasdaq as well prior to the SoftBank acquisition in 2016. The fact that an IPO now could, the major concerns was there from the British government and other players in the industry, key people, stating that for ARM to fall into foreign hands would be a national security disaster. But an IPO is pretty much just as bad, because it means now everybody can have a stake in the pie, can't they?
Well, they can do. They can. Yeah, I mean,
But
so yeah, I mean, Qualcomm come a good idea, and I like the idea. So Qualcomm have kind of gone on record as saying that they're kind of suggesting that maybe rather than ARM doing an IPO, it should be sold off to a kind of conglomerate of
yes,
chip companies, shouldn't they? Yeah. So Qualcomm, Apple, Google, whoever, the big players all buy a chunk, and they need enough of the players, enough different players to basically make it neutral, guaranteeing its neutrality, but also having that investment from other chip makers and the technology to build a better ARM.
The thing is, though, with this consortium, is that, as you say, it's got to be the right people, as in the right owners. As you say, some people, Intel are interested in doing this, as are Qualcomm, as you say. People like Apple would be good as well. Ironically, don't forget, it was Apple who had a controlling stake in ARM, who sold that off. Wasn't it the early 90s? I think they sold it off.
Like that, wasn't it? Yeah.
And it was rumored, though, that the money received from that sale helped prop them up during that quite difficult time, post jobs. So
that
it'd be ironic.
Money.
It would be ironic if they came back and did it. But I think you're right. This consortium would be good. It would then obviously remove any concerns of an outright control of ARM, given their place in the ecosystem. And a lot of people, and there's so much competition, isn't it? That actually it could play well in that sense. I think it would be good. But how do you ensure that that there is not a controlling stake? Or I guess on the other side is having the UK, isn't it, by what they call a golden share, isn't it, to have a controlling share in the they can go with it. But I don't know. What's your thoughts? Do you think?
I mean, I think it's good. I like the idea of this one. I think it's a good idea. Although Qualcomm is the only one that's spoken up, and will they get enough people to join them to be able to do that? Would SoftBank take it seriously, or SoftBank now very much focused on an IPO at all costs? I don't know.
I mean, SoftBank, I think, went out. They want their money back. They want to get as far away from this as possible. Qualcomm, on the other hand, you can see what's happening, because obviously, ARM, the massive underpins their business, doesn't it? And I could imagine from a Qualcomm perspective, it's like, we want a piece of this pie. We can't buy you. If Nvidia buys you, it's going to screw us. So actually, how do we do this to ensure, I guess, a way forward, isn't it?
Yeah.
But so I think the IPO is not due for, I don't know if it's later this year or next year, but as you said, they are pushing ahead with it, aren't they, at some pace? I don't know. And given where we are at the moment, it would be interesting to know where we are.
Maybe if it's going to be next year, maybe Qualcomm can round up a posse and get enough buyers together that it would be an interesting proposition. I think if there was enough of them that it was basically stayed neutral, then I don't think any of the regulators would have issues with it either.
No, I think you're right. I think you'd avoid a regulatory issue. I think it would probably please regulators, rather than an IPO where things can get messy and you could end up with controlling stakes from other places. So yeah, I think this is a positive step forward. If it happens, I don't, that's the key thing, isn't it? If given an IPO and a return on investment potentially for SoftBank, but stranger things have happened in the tech world.
They have, yeah. Well, we'll see if anything comes of that.
We will indeed. So this next story, this is slightly left field for us, but I like this. This got me thinking.
Yeah, I mean, we should have done this one before the Qualcomm one, since we were talking about Russia.
We should have done. I was just about to say. So I mean, the headline on Ars Technica was Russia seeks to hijack German telescope on its X-ray spacecraft. Now, I'll tell you now, when I read that, I was like, sorry, it's X-ray what? But it turns out this is some quite advanced satellite that is currently sat as at 1.5 million kilometers from Earth, looking
Yeah,
out into the cosmos.
it
A bit
is.
like
It's
the James Webb kind of thing.
yeah, that's the one. And it's called the Spectrum Rontgen Gamma Telescope. So it was a
Well
joint
done.
venture between Russia and Germany. And Russia basically built the satellite, and Germany provided the telescopes, the instruments, and the idea is to map, as you said, galaxy clusters and stuff like that, and look for supermassive black holes. So I think they launched it back in, when did they launch it now? 2014, 15, something like that. And it's about halfway through its mission. And obviously, with Russia invading Ukraine, Germany decided that this wasn't really going to work. They put their telescopes to sleep into kind of standby mode. Well, the Russians weren't happy with that, were they?
No.
Or more importantly, Dmitry Rogozin, chief of
Yes,
Roscosmos.
yes. He of the
Him.
angry tweets.
Him and the angry tweets. Well, they decided, as the title suggests, they decided to hijack the telescope. So apparently, he's given instructions to start work on restoring the operation of the German telescope in a satellite. So it worked together with some of the equipment they've already got there. And despite Germany's demands to shut down one or two telescopes, Russian specialists insist on continuing its work. And they basically said, where's that line? Yeah, Roscosmos will make relevant decisions in the near future. They, the people that made the decision to shut down telescopes, don't have a moral right to halt this research for humankind just because their pro-fascist views are close to our enemies. Sorry, what?
Yeah, but this is the guy that got into a whole tweet spat with was it Scott Kelly or Mark Kelly? I can't remember which one.
Yeah,
The one who was up in space for a long time.
yeah.
Who basically called him out for being an idiot, didn't he, or a moron? I can't remember who it was now, but basically
That was it. Yeah,
because he threatened he threatened to drop the ISS, didn't he, out of orbit.
that was it. Yeah.
Forgetting that it really wasn't his call, and B, that's not how it works.
There's no big button that just drops it.
No, he has gone slightly off the boil, hasn't he? Following the Russian, aggression and war.
He has, yeah.
And he seems to be going on, I don't know, a kind of one-man mission to destroy every ounce of cooperation that exists between Roscosmos and every other spacefaring, nation. Given the fact that Russian cosmonauts and American cosmonauts and other countries up on the ISS now, war hasn't broken out on the ISS. There's certainly no stories leaking of, conflict up there. Because the reality is, I think, when you're orbiting, how many hundreds of kilometers above the planet, surely, the fact of the nature of countries and differences become very small, don't they? Now, that's not to take anything away from the amount of people who have lost their lives, the damage caused by the war in Ukraine. But what I mean by that is that when, as a human, I can only imagine that looking down on your planet, things become very insignificant. If you see what I mean,
Definitely.
And things like space exploration, it's just we have to work together. But clearly he doesn't see that. So what we're expecting now, then, I guess our next story will be probably along the lines of Russian hackers, break into German space research, to gain control of satellite. I mean, what's going to happen here?
I just don't know where he's going with, or how he's even going to do it. I mean, do they have backdoors in the system? They can spin the satellites back up. Are they completely separate systems? I don't know enough about how this was put together to kind of speculate.
I was going to say, because Russia built it, didn't they, and launched it.
They built the satellite, yeah. I think they got one telescope on there, and Germany built another telescope and a load of other instruments that went onto it.
And the kind of way I interpret it is that Germany basically controlled the implementation, and then Russia had access to that, by the way it describes it. But it kind of then implies that Russia's got control of maybe the orbiting or the maneuvering. Who knows? But it does sound like this is again going to end in tears, doesn't it? And going to be another disaster here. I mean, another point is that these what's the word? These telescopes here, they are going to unlock so much research, aren't they? The James Webb Space Telescope that's up there now, isn't it? That's kind of replaced Hubble. The data that's going to come out of that, and particularly, I guess, this telescope as well, to tell us about the formation of galaxies, the stars, and beyond. We should be working together for this. Instead, it's just war again, isn't it? Just envelopes and covers everything.
It is, yeah.
And crazy Russian space directors, I suppose, is the other concern. I mean, Hollywood are going to have a field day at some point in the future, aren't they?
There'll be many films to come on this, I'm sure.
Yeah, there will be. Right. Well, coming back down to earth then. Yes, our friends in the EU have finally decided that USB-C is now going to be the de facto universal port, isn't it, for all of wired charging by the end of 2024. And this will apply not just to phones, but pretty much any, I guess, electronic item.
Tablets, digital. Are there analog cameras? Anyway, digital cameras, headphones, e-readers, handheld games consoles, basically anything sold in the EU,
but
needs to charge and is big enough to fit a USB-C port on, will be required to have a USB-C port.
Apart from a laptop at this stage.
Apart from that, that's because they haven't quite decided on the exact implementation of USB-C then, because obviously different power requirements. But pretty sure most modern laptops charge USB-C anyway.
Yeah. So
I mean, even Apple do USB-C.
I was just say Apple, you could
charge it, even though like my MacBook Pro has MagSafe, I can still charge off USB.
I did that in the week in the office. I was sat at a conference table, and one of my colleagues had their earlier generation Mac with USB. I was just that plugged in, that's fine.
Jobs again.
So this is good. Don't get me wrong. I think standardization here is great, but the whole of the media, tech media, of course, has tried to frame this, hasn't it, as Apple are going to have to. This is all against Apple, isn't it? This is all, we're going to target Apple. And actually, it's like when you think about it, apart from one device, Apple are pretty much there, aren't they?
They are. It's just that one, and they make so much money out of Lightning. I could see why they've been reticent and hesitant to do it, really. But enough's enough. I mean, they got out of it last time by shipping a dongle, didn't they?
It would. I think that's the thing, isn't it?
So they've closed that loophole in this revision of the legislation.
But Apple had a bit of a retort, though, didn't they, on this statement, given the USB-C, wasn't it? Because as far as they're concerned, they think this will create additional electronic waste rather than reduce it, won't it? Because it will then make a whole ecosystem of Lightning redundant. Well, it would do, I guess, initially.
You could argue that was Apple's fault to begin with by choosing a proprietary standard.
Yeah, but then you can also argue the same with also there's micro USB, there's mini USB.
Yeah, but they're all, you don't have to pay for the licenses to those, as far as I'm aware. They are open standards. Apple could have gone with one of those.
No, I guess you're right. I mean, but if
they're not as nice. I mean, USB-C is great, but micro and mini were not great connectors. Lightning was a much better interface, definitely, but it's still stuck in USB 2 era.
But nothing changes here. If you go back to the old days of Nokia's and the Alcatels, all that kind of stuff, they all had proprietary chargers, didn't they?
Everyone did, yeah.
Everybody had a proprietary charger. So
when was the last time you saw a proprietary charger on an Android phone?
Bingo. That's the difference, isn't it? That's the difference.
Never. Every single Android device I've seen has had some kind of USB implementation on it.
It has indeed, because USB is, it is
as the name says, universal. I mean, it's everywhere.
It is universal until you then look up how many different versions of USB there are, and it's quite mind-boggling, isn't it? It's like, there are quite a few implementations. But you're right. If you take the common ones that you see in the wild, USB-C, mini, micro, and the standard, I guess, what everyone thinks is USB, which is USB A, isn't it?
Yes.
Which but I mean, look, you're right. Apple, the time is up. Apple are, I think, as we've spoken about before, it is very likely that this generation of iPhone, which is the 14, will have Lightning, but many sources are pointing that the iPhone 15 will go USB-C, which, if it does, will be in turn to come in line with this legislation. Not that they did it, I don't think, in terms of the legislation, but the timings will work, won't they?
Or maybe they'll just make it so thin that it can't fit a USB-C port, and I have to carry on using Lightning.
Or they'll just do what they've always done: is they'll throw a dongle in the box.
No, you're not allowed to throw a dongle in. That's one of the things. You can't put a dongle.
No dongles. Well, Apple have definitely
No dongles. No, that's how Apple got out of it last time. Well, because is it micro or mini? One of them was meant to be the industry standard, and you have to have it. But Apple provided a dongle.
I think it was mini, wasn't it? Yeah, I think it was mini. Yeah.
So now the EU were like, we're not falling for that crap again. We'll say no dongles.
Yeah. We're not going to catch you again. Hang about it.
Yeah, fool me once.
Won't catch me out this time. Yeah, you're right. That's when they build an iPhone so thin that they say it only supports Qi charging.
Yeah, so obviously if it has no ports, it doesn't have to USB. If it's purely a wireless, like a watch or something like that, then they're not mandating you now put a USB-C port on your Apple Watch, for example.
Can you imagine that? God, yeah,
I know
that would be nuts. But yeah, this is going to going to have. The only thing I will say on this, which comes kind of a serious point, is USB-C isn't quite the standard that people think it is, though, is it? Because there are cables that do data. There are the cables that do data plus video. There are ones that have different power capabilities, and it isn't. I know that the one that comes in your phone, pretty much, but it is true. They are not easy to identify if you've got multiple USB-C cables.
No, that's true, and they are making another standard. It's not been ratified yet. So USB-C itself is just a port. It means nothing. You can have USB 2 speeds or no data speeds at all in a USB-C
right. It's
port.
Just a socket, isn't it?
It's just a socket. So they mandate that has to have this socket. They are going to be mandating on the quick charge standard.
Yeah,
whatever it'll be, quick charge 3 or whatever. They're going to mandate that they also have to support a certain quick charge standard. So hopefully that will bring some standardization to this. But you're right, there are still multiple different cables, but that was no different from USB 2 and 3.
No, you're right.
Port, sorry, because I've got cables that just power only. I've got cables that do USB 2 data and cables that do USB 3 data, but all with the same ports.
It is, but again, that's the thing. I think that just sometimes isn't always apparent, though, is it? I think when you look at these,
I think just USB-C brings that extra bit, the fact that you can have Thunderbolt in it and not Thunderbolt, but you can also have these multiple different standards of charging, can't you? Like 100 watt, 60 watt, 20 watt, whatever it is, and that further complicates things.
It does indeed. Right then, well, let's tee up the final story there before I unleash you in the AMD news torrent. So, this is one we were talking about a while ago. So this is the cloud gaming. So anybody
CMA.
Yes. So anybody has been doing cloud gaming, and we talked about this before, like the Project X Cloud and stuff like that. Apple are really, really, really unhappy about anybody having cloud services, aren't they, in the App Store? And if you recall, do you remember when we were talking back, wasn't it, about the Xbox stuff? They almost wanted to have an app, didn't they, for every single game?
Yes. It was an odd one because, their view was that different games can have different ratings. Okay, I understand that one, 18, PG, 15, whatever. And they couldn't possibly have one app to allow you to access all of those. You had to basically wrap each game and put it on the store. But then they let Netflix in. And all the video ones who have, again, multiple different TV shows or movies with different ratings, but they didn't have to have a wrapper for each of their programs.
Exactly. It did seem a little bit single-minded, wasn't it?
It just so happened that Apple launched a gaming service,
Oh, conveniently timed. Well, it's now been deemed, as you say, by the CMA, the Competitions and Markets Authorities.
Competition and Marketing Authority,
that's right, here in the UK, has now decided, or declared, I should say, that Apple's ban on cloud services through the apps, and that also every single browser on iOS has to use WebKit as the engine, is also anti-competitive. So this has just been announced by the CMA last week. and this is after several different investigations, plus also several different antitrust investigations around the world as well, wasn't it? I guess have probably fed into this. So basically, there's 2 points, as you say. So the first part is the cloud gaming, the fact that there was a sort of an outright ban, if you will, isn't it, on cloud gaming applications. And then, as you say, the big one is the fact that every browser on the iOS platform, whether it's Firefox, Chrome, I don't know, whatever you want to play with.
Safari itself. Yep.
Yes, of course, Safari uses WebKit. Basically, they're all Safari, just with a different skin, aren't they? Not good.
Oh, and that's, the CMA did have a little cheeky pun in there. I rose my eyebrows when they were talking about the WebKit. They were basically saying that it doesn't, it severely limits the potential for rival browsers to differentiate themselves from Safari, for example, on features such as speed and functionality, and limits Apple's incentive to invest in its browser engine. Okay, fair enough. Then goes on to say restrictions also seriously inhibit the capability of web apps. Now, obviously, web apps are something Apple have been pushing for. And apps that run on browsers rather than having to be individually downloaded, providing consumers and businesses with the full benefits of this innovative technology. And they're bang on. They're straight on the point there. Apple need to open this up and allow other engines.
Yeah. I totally agree with you. There's just no other way of looking at it. And they are just crippling innovation at what they call, I guess, for them is a standardization, privacy protection, whatever you want to call it. But actually, it's just a way to control and regulate against competitive technologies, isn't it? That's the only way to look at it.
It is, definitely. And there's. Look, they go on about how secure the platform is and how they can use sandboxing and isolation technology. Then build something a bit even more secure that web engines have to run in to provide an extra layer, for example. If it goes to download something and you then go to access it, put a prompt that says you're now potentially accessing a malicious application. Extra safeguards in place if need be, if you're that worried about the security part.
Yeah, exactly. But given this, they've said the statement, I didn't see anything to suggest there was any punishment into it, was there? It was purely more of a
no, not yet. I think it's still ongoing. Yeah, I think the investigation's only just finished, so we're still kind of in that middle stage where a decision on what will need to happen hasn't been made yet.
No, and the other one wasn't it that alongside this, there's investigation into the App Store. Excuse me, I can't get the words out either. Apple's App Store terms and conditions, which started last year, which is continuing, and they're also doing one in parallel with Google as well, on these similar in-app payment systems in the Play Store, which is very similar to the ones that's going on somewhere else, not far away from here.
Indeed.
So, I mean, look, in one respect, this just highlights what I think other people have been saying, for some time now. It isn't going to change anything overnight. I do think there should be reconsideration from the point of cloud gaming applications. Why can't Microsoft have an xCloud app that all it does, launches the xCloud service?
Yeah.
And what is that? Why is that any different to playing it through Safari on your device? Because that's all it's doing, isn't it?
Signing up for Netflix or Amazon Prime or Disney Plus or Hulu or whatever, they all have PG and 12 and 18 rated things that you can just access.
Exactly. Nothing is. I totally agree with this. I've got no sympathy for Apple really on this point, because I don't think
they need to be hit hard on that one.
Yeah, they're not. It is not going to harm their business, because they don't have a competitive business, cloud streaming business for gaming. That's not what they're not. It's not going to cause any impact. It's not going to cause any loss of revenue, because if you're playing that kind of stuff on xCloud, that's a totally different consumer to his playing, the latest iOS game, isn't it? They're totally different.
Exactly.
Markets.
Yeah, they're very different. And as we discussed, Apple don't really do gaming.
No, they don't.
I think the mobile games are great, and they are improving definitely, and there are some half decent 3D ones as well. But it's still not the same as playing an Xbox Series X game streamed from the cloud.
No, I totally agree. agree with it. Well, before I get too riled up on that, then, I'm going to unleash you from this AMD torrent that I keep building up, because there is so much to cover here. But I'm going to let you take the floor and the mic here and give us a rundown then on what AMD have announced. And I think there's some features in here as well, isn't there?
There is some futures. They didn't tell us much, but we'll get to that one. So, and we're going to keep it high level because there was a wealth of data. We could be here all day. But yeah, it was their financial analyst day last week. But obviously, we did the worldwide, the Apple event, so we didn't get to cover it. But they unleashed a load of information. So let's start. So we did speak, was it 2 or 3 weeks ago, about Zen 4, AMD's next generation of chips. We talked about the one, I think, was it the 7950? I can't remember what they were calling it. The 7000 chip, the top one, the 16 core 32 thread one. We talked about the new 670 chipset. So anyway, there's some more updates and more details on Zen 4. So we don't have the full lineup yet, but they are telling us more information. They're confirming again it is 5 nanometer. They're saying it's 8 to 10% increase instructions per clock. 50% single thread performance gains, up to 125% memory bandwidth per core. There's some new extensions on the way for AI and AVX. And a big, they're calling it significant generational performance per watt and frequency improvement. So again, they're really concentrating on performance per watt, reducing that energy use, giving you the same kind of performance, or, keeping the same power envelope, but getting even more performance out of it. Something, that Intel could probably learn from. What else? Yeah.
Quite a good point here. So, what are the key takeaways then in terms of the kind of, I guess, product announcement pieces?
My key one for the Zen 4, really, and they have said there are 3 different types of Zen 4. There is Zen 4 with Vcache, which is that 3D Vcache that they introduced on one chip with the Zen 3, and there's a Zen 4C. And I was like, what's the 4C? I had to Google it on. The 4C? They just casually put it on the slide. I couldn't find any more information, but I've Googled. Yeah, the C version is a compute-focused version. So I imagine, as we've heard, and I don't know this for sure, but as we've heard, all the Zen 4s are going to come with, they're going to be APUs. They're all going to have graphics on board. And I'm maybe speculating here that the compute-focused versions won't have the graphics chips. But I could be completely wrong there.
Okay.
But so they also, at the same time, announced Zen 5 for 2024, didn't they?
Yes.
They told us very little here. They literally said, again, you're going to get a Zen 5, a 5 of Vcache, a 5C. It'll be 4 nanometer and 3 nanometer process nodes coming in 2024, and that's all we got on that one.
Yeah, that's just kind of by the way, wasn't it? Here's what's coming. It's that's what that I like to think of, that kind of a look on it.
Exactly. So it's good to know there is, and it'll use the same chipsets, for example, that current Zen 4s are going to be using, which is a brand new chipset. So I imagine we're going to have it for quite a few generations yet before they change the chipset again.
Again, I think it demonstrates, wasn't it, that this Vcache program isn't just an experiment; it's actually something they're going to run through there.
No, it was quite a success. And as we go through this, you'll see Vcache, or they use slightly different names, but I'm pretty sure it's the same Vcache idea used throughout not just the desktop but all the server stuff as well.
Nice, cool. Okay, looking forward to that. I tell you, the more we talk about AMD, the more we see the Zen 4 architecture, the more I really am seriously considering that pivot.
Well, if you're thinking about Zen 4, would you like an AMD graphics card to go with that, sir?
Oh, well, this is interesting. Please tell me more.
Yeah, this is the first information I've seen on, is it RDNA 3, which is going to be the new generation. They are touting 50% better performance per watt. They're using chiplets for the first time. So they've been using chiplets for a number of years in their CPUs. I think it's the first time we'll ever see chiplets in a GPU itself. But yeah, they're saying basically 50% improvement over RDNA 2. Again, using 5 nanometer. They basically re-architected the compute units from the ground up. They've optimized graphics pipelines. They're playing more on their AMD Infinity Cache, which is basically just like 3D Vcache, but for the GPU, which is another, I think currently they use it as 128 meg of super fast cache, as well as obviously having up to 16 gig of VRAM there. And that's kind of really helped them. So yeah, again, we haven't got huge amounts of information on here. But the slides they shared, they're basically scaling vertically as well as horizontally. There's some buzzwords for you there. So they are saying, what, three times the interconnect energy efficiency, 15 times the interconnect density. So by the sound of it, they are really pumping up the bandwidth there, which, as I imagine, is what allow them to give you all that extra performance up to 50% more on the same power envelope.
Wow. Amazing how they are able to do that.
It is. Well, again, but this is all talk. It's at AMD's financial day, so we won't really know until products start hitting the market, until we actually get reviews in.
No, you're right.
Sound good.
It definitely does, and I guess so that the multi GPU piece there and that kind of high performance piece is very similar to what Apple have done, isn't it? With the M1, the M1 Ultra, the bridging there, isn't it? The kind of what they're talking about there.
Yep.
But we've not, that's not been seen. I don't think any manufacturer has done that with GPUs before, isn't it? So that kind of
no, exactly.
That's stuck together. So this could
AMD
be
CPUs for ages, so they've got the experience there.
Oh yes, I mean, from a GPU, but from a GPU perspective, we've seen obviously CPUs, but on a GPU side of things, they haven't. This is again a first in that sense.
It's the first, yeah.
But yeah, okay. But like you say, this is early days. RDNA3, very early. It's again kind of, I guess, looking to get investors to invest more. I suspect, isn't it?
Yeah.
As one of their plays.
It is, and I think RDNA3 will be out this year, from my understanding as well. But again, they've not given us any actual solid dates.
Okay,
but they did tell us about some new server, some more Epic CPUs.
Epic, oh yes, the great names as well.
Epic. I thought. The Epic's great. So, and they do sound actually pretty damn epic. So they've released 4 of them. I only have notes on 2, which are more interesting. So they have Sienna, which is their they say low cost one, but I still don't think it's going to be that low cost.
I don't think
so you can have up to 64 cores in it. But these are designed for edge and telecommunication industries, something that AMD doesn't currently play in, but Intel does with their Xeon D line. So I think these are going to be more embedded, soldered on sockets. But yeah, it'll be on Zen 4's core architecture, 5 nanometers, up to 64 cores. Coming 2023 on that one. The Genoa X, which is their all singing dancing one, sounds really, really good actually. Again, same Zen 4, 5 nanometers. This is going to have up to 96 cores with AMD's Vcache, as well as up to 1 gig or more of level 3 cache per socket, because obviously it supports multiple sockets here. The new SP5 platform sounds insane. So it's going to have up to 12 channel DDR5 support. So forget your quad channel, have 12. And also PCI Express 5. They say they've not mentioned how many lanes, but if it's anything like the current SP3 platform, it's going to be tons. I mean, SP3 currently supports up to 8 16x slots.
That is, I mean,
that's a lot of PCI Express.
There's a lot of PCI Express. There's a lot of power.
Sorry, that's per socket. That's per socket.
Sorry, that's per socket.
Per socket.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. I'm slightly. Whoa. Okay. Yeah, definitely. I need to take another drink here. I'm slightly okay.
So I'm presuming that's only going to expand. And I think SP3 only supports PCI Express 4. I think so. I imagine this will be getting PCI Express 5, like the Zen 4 stuff does. So yeah, I'll never be able to afford this or even play with it, I imagine.
No.
I'm really keen to read more about it.
I mean, talk about performance per watt as well. I mean, just unbelievable power there in that chips there. Those Sienna ones, though, I guess if they're like the Xeon Ds, I wonder whether they're soldered on.
I think they will be soldered on. Is it BGA, Bull Grid Array?
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah,
you won't be able to replace them. So yeah, they'll be in the motherboard, and you'll buy it as a package.
But yeah, impressive though. But again, you're right. Intel, it's a space that Intel competes in, and AMD, you want a piece of that market. And it sounds like they've got
a big market,
a very compelling offering. From the details that we have at least here, be obviously interesting to know what it performs like. But given the history and the performance of the rest of the AMD lineup in recent years, I have no doubt that it will be very good.
Yeah,
and very impressive. And that Genoa, we can't afford that.
No, maybe in 4 or 5 years we might be able to get a secondhand Sienna on eBay. Maybe. Maybe. One we certainly won't be able to afford is AMD's new cDNA, so their compute DNA free platform. So this is where they join GPUs and CPUs into one big SoC for AI acceleration and that kind of stuff. So they are announcing cDNA free. They are quoting 5 times the performance per watt, so 500%. Again, it's all based on Zen 4 and RDNA 3 because it's a combined. So, yeah, 3D chiplet packages. So they'll be stacking chips on top. Next gen Infinity Cache, unified memory. So like AMD, like Apple's M1, where you've got the unified memory for CPU and GPU. That will have it in there. What else are they saying? Yes, they did announce the one product. It's called the MI300, or sorry, AMD Instinct MI300, which is a data center APU. They're calling it the world's first one. So that is combining the CDNA 3 with an EPYC CPU, all tied together. Apparently going to be 8 times the performance of their current MI250.
Wow.
Yeah, it's just going to be huge on every way, I think. But I imagine probably not power hungry.
So I'm guessing you should say, so these are designed for what, high ML AI?
The MAI data center, fluid computational dynamics, that kind of stuff.
High, what you need a lot of processing to do. And I guess not just processing, but large data sets as well, isn't it? That it needs to really work through very heavily on compute. So not necessarily it's the speed. We're not talking about super fast gigahertz here, but it's more around the actual compute muscle, isn't it, that we've got here, alongside the the GPU for that. I guess the interconnects that are there. But I mean, wow. I mean, like you say, this is the kind of stuff that it sits in data centers, supercomputer kind of packages, doesn't it? That comes up and
definitely.
Maybe once in about 10 years pops up on eBay randomly, and you're like, "What the hell is that?"
Definitely.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Instinct. Okay. Impressive.
Instinct is their AI platform. And they gives it a few more tidbits on Zen 5. And they did announce Zen 5 is a ground up redoing of their microarchitecture. So Zen 2, 3, 4 have kind of been evolutionary enhancements and increases and adding slightly new bits of technology. Zen 5 will be a complete rebuild from the ground up.
God, nice. It's always the thing, though, when they talk about these things, isn't it? Is if you're at a point of purchase, you're like, I need something new. Do I hold off and wait another 2 years because it could be better, or do I upgrade now? Isn't it? I guess, but it depends where you're planning in or what you're looking at doing.
I think we've had this chat offline, haven't we? Because I know you're thinking about this year or early next year.
Yeah, probably
redoing your PC, aren't you? And I think you should I go for Zen 3, which is the current ones? But then I think you're going to be limited to, or you'll be limited to Zen 3 because Zen 4's a new motherboard. But if you go down the Zen 4 route, you can always upgrade to Zen 5 later because it's the same socket.
That's the thing. I think, this is the key, isn't it? But for that, and as you say, given the improvements in the Zen 4 lineup, that moves to that 4/3 nanometer piece. We've still got the V cache that's coming, with Zen 4. You're right. It's probably a good move here as such there. And I mean, I was looking at some of the details there around, wasn't it, the high performance, what they call their high performance with low power consumption, and that 25% gain over from Zen 3 to Zen 4. Given the Zen 3s are pretty good chips anyway, aren't they, for that? And there was overall, according to AMD at least, was a 35% increase overall performance improvement from Zen 3 to Zen 4, which they based on a 16-core, 32-thread performance tested Cinnamon. I mean, it did have a whiff of Apple about it with the slide.
Oh, these charts are very Apple.
But given that there is a grain of truth in there, it would be very intriguing to see what the Zen 5 looks like over Zen 4 if it's a complete rebuild. But I'm look. I have to say, I was reading through these notes earlier, looking at these updates, and my interest is piqued, as they would say.
Yeah, and I think definitely. And the last two things they announced is surprise, there'll be an RDNA 4 in 2024, but that's all we're going to tell you. And there's a 5th gen EPYC, obviously to go with Zen, based on Zen 5, called Turin. And again, that'll be end of 2024. But that's all they're telling us on that.
Wow. Well, we've put all of the links there, plus quite a few additional links around the AMD in the show notes, because there was a lot of information to cover there.
Yeah, there is.
We could probably done a 3-hour show, I think, on a lot of the details and working through it. But what is proven here is that AMD have a solid, fully fledged roadmap for the next few years. Solid product lineup, great investment in the technology, and especially with the Zen 5, they're looking at that redesign, and no longer are AMD just a competitor to Intel. They are a top tier 1 CPU manufacturer who's providing impressive results across all of their performance base, whether it be low end CPUs through to the high end data center epics, as well as obviously graphics in the middle there as well. Nothing about AMD these days is budget, in my opinion. Nothing at all.
Definitely not. No.
So very, very impressive stuff, and definitely say some of that stuff we're never going to see in a million years. But other stuff,
I'd love to get my hands on some.
Yeah, well, I think we're probably closer than you reckon to at least having to go on some of that. But yeah, very cool stuff.
Maybe.
Great update. Right then. Well, in that case, then I do believe it is. Yes, the Techcraft Rumor Mill is back this week, following a little bit of a rest at WWDC. Purely because we wanted to see whether some of the Dub announcements were rumors or not. But yes, of course, there were a few things missing from Dub, weren't there, rumored? And one of those happens to be, Carl, the
AR VR mixed reality headset. So, old Ming Chi Kuo, he's been out again on Twitter. He loves his Twitter now, doesn't he? He's posting.
He's all over that. I mean, he pumps out more tweets these days than I think he ever did in his email updates or whatever.
Oh, definitely. So he's saying, obviously, it's been postponed. Surprise, to Q2 2023, but he has given us a roadmap of how this is going to play out. So he said that it's going to enter extended validation testing Q3 this year. He's expecting a media event in January 2023 to announce this. He's saying the dev kits will be available 2 to 4 weeks after the event. So sometime from early Feb to late Feb, I imagine. He's saying pre-orders will be available in Q2 next year and hitting the shelves just before WWDC 2023.
Okay. I don't doubt this now, given the fact we didn't see anything at Dub, and I think we kind of
not even a hint, did we? Really?
No, and we kind of agreed that wasn't going to happen, though, didn't we? I think
we did. Yeah, it would have been one more thing kind of announcement dropped at the end. But
yeah,
no,
and I think given the fact of how big this is and such a change to the ecosystem, I think it would have been odd to have just dropped it in, wouldn't it? As a
it would.
Like, oh, by the way, this is a real headline piece. So, yeah, I think 2023 is more logical. Again, the one thing there, of course, I think a lot of people are suggesting, and I think this is true, is Apple don't want to give this away as this is what's coming, because once they do that, the market will catch up. This needs to be ready to rock and roll, doesn't it? Imminently.
Yeah, they want to be coming out the doors with a really polished product.
Yeah, and give developers a window of time that doesn't allow for competitors to prototype a build and drop that, does it?
No, and this is why they've been spending so much time on it. Actually, they didn't speak much about it this year, which is bizarre. But a lot of the previous years, they've done a lot of work on AR kit, haven't they?
Yeah, and there was hardly any mention of it.
There was some tidbits, wasn't there, an AR kit? I can't remember what they were now. Oh, there was the room mapping stuff with LiDAR, wasn't there?
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that was very cool. Yeah.
Basically built into AR kit now, so you don't have to figure it out yourself. You can just call the SDK and it will map the room for you, which is obviously naturally leading onto AR. They're going to need that.
Yeah, I think this is. I think realistically speaking, this is going to be a next year release. I don't think any chance of it this year whatsoever. No. We've got all sorts of problems going off. We've got supply chain issues. They're going to probably try and want to mitigate that with the iPhone launch. They've got the M2 obviously now dropped, haven't they? Which we talked about for Dub, and we'll talk about perhaps in a minute. So, and again, some of the hardware specs that are rumored, and I stress rumored, with this kit, AR VR headset, is way above and beyond the current market equipment, isn't it? The Index and Vive and so it needs to be it needs to be improved. I mean, but
Yeah.
don't get me wrong, Quo is not. I mean, Quo is the gold standard, it seems, on Apple Rumours, but he's not always been 100%, though, is he? Let's be honest.
No, he's not at all.
There have been some blips in his known, but given the track record that he has, this doesn't feel like a kind of step back. This feels like a revision based on what didn't drop dub. So I kind of get a pinch of salt, common sense. But there you go.
And he was quite specific about the timeline as well. So he's obviously timelines can always change, but I'm guessing he's got some inside track there.
Yeah, definitely. What else we got in the bag then?
So, and this is going to surprise no one, but TSMC, we're going to start mass producing the M2 Pro based on 3nm tech later this year. So obviously they've only just announced the M2 chips, but analyst Jeff Poe of, how we pronounce this, Haitong International Tech Research, is the person that's come out with the information here. So yeah, he's saying starting production later this year. It's going to have 8 performance cores and 4 efficiency cores, so totaling 12 cores. First of 10 in the current M1 Pro.
That guy, your gentleman you just mentioned there,
yeah,
I think he also didn't he also corroborate Michin Kuo's AR/VR headset 2023 piece as well. I think he did.
He may well have done.
Yeah, I think he did. So we're saying then, okay, so TSMC, okay. Let's be honest. There's going to be a Pro chip. There's no argument on that Pro chip because Apple have now
a bit like Max and an Ultra one.
Yeah, exactly. Given the fact of they've now set out, haven't they, what the SKUs are going to look like. We now know for the foreseeable future, excuse me, what the Apple CPU SKUs are going to be, unless there's a complete sea change at some point.
Well, other than the Mac Pro.
Well, yeah, that's an outline. We can't talk about that. So the M2 then is going to have a Pro chip. Yeah, no shocker there. But you're right; it has to have, definitely, as you say, it's got to have improvements over the current M1 in some of that. So it's going to be like a bit like an Intel piece and AMD. Isn't it? It's just going to be squeezing more power.
It will
from a point here. But I don't know. Look, I've got the M1 Pro, as you know.
You have,
I was talking to somebody. At work the other day about it. They were asking about it. Why didn't I go for the Max? I was like, to be honest with you, I haven't found anything yet which slows my machine. Nothing. There is nothing yet that I've put at it personally. Granted, I don't do high-end video rendering. I throw a 4K of the drone, a bit like you do.
Yeah.
It does not struggle any of that. I don't do high-end audio piece on that. The Max is a great chip, a bit like the Ultra chip, but you've got to have something to throw at it, haven't you? You've got to.
Yeah.
You've got to do something. Though there was something interesting I need to notice in that report, was something about Apple's in-house server, wasn't there? Which was a reference to the Mac Pro, which was so Jeff Pugh, just make sure I get that right, wasn't it? Yeah. Which was seen. So 9 to 5 Mac are reporting, aren't they, that in his report they talk about Apple's in-house server, which is a reference to the new Mac Pro. And he also suggests a new iPad with the 3nm chip as well. But again,
I imagine that's an M2
of some
sort. Yeah,
it'll be an M2 because there's. This is just my personal thought. Apple will not put anything but the base standard M1, 2, 3, whatever chips in the iPad. They won't do it. Why would you have an iPad?
One we're going to talk about next.
Well, I was going to say, why would you have an iPad with an M2 Pro chip in it?
I don't know. It's a bit crazy. Well, we weren't expecting to see an M1 or an M2 in an iPad, so
no, but there's going to be now.
That one.
yeah. All right. Well, on that point, then, which leads us to the final rumor. Then I'll let you tee that up because I've got, rumors.
So we've got 2. We've got Ross Young and Gurman kind of collaborating here or backing up each other to an extent. So Ross Young, who's he's actually ridiculously accurate, but he talks about displays because that's the I suppose the thing he's into is display. So he's saying there's a 14.1 inch iPad due, running mini LED with ProMotion, powered by an M2. 14.1-inch iPad. That's not a tablet anymore, is it?
It's not a tablet. It's not a tablet. And the size of it. So, given I've got the 12.9-inch Gen 3 iPad Pro, Gen 3, that's quite a big form factor.
So another 1.2 inches there, yeah.
Right. Okay, that is not going to be a 14-inch chassis, as we know, because they can be clever, can't they, with the screen and the bezels and that. But that's huge. Do you remember the first gen 12-inch iPads?
Oh god, it was ridiculous.
They were that was as big as my at the time 13-inch MacBook Pro. You put that on the clamshell and it was big, and it was as big. It was huge. In fact, it put me off getting one for so long because I was like, it just looks hideous, Whereas when they shrunk it down,
but that was the design with the Touch ID, wasn't it?
Yeah. I think this is ridiculous because,
big enough to put an M2 Pro in though.
Well, yeah, there lies your point. But to a small degree, does this not then kind of start competing against some of the larger surfaces? What's the one that Microsoft? Oh no, the Hub, isn't it? That's quite big. That's like 20-something inches. Isn't
the Hub's the Hub goes up to like 40 inches, isn't it?
Yeah,
or larger.
But I just don't get it. Don't get it.
Be surprised by that one. That's just quite out there, Apple wise.
I can't. Yeah, I can't say it because to me it's just like no. To me, it just I don't get it. I don't see the logic in it because when you took what I mean, go on. You might as well say the rest of it because the next part is again.
We're also allegedly, and this has come from Gurman, not Ross Young. We're also getting a 15-inch MacBook Air and a 12-inch laptop. We don't have a name. Could this be the return of the MacBook?
Well, this sounds like the return of the MacBook at 12 inches, doesn't it? Which to me, again, seems a really, really problematic one here because the new Air has baselined the Mac lineup, hasn't it? MacBook, lineup at the moment. It's almost cannibalized the current weird M2 13-inch one with Touch ID, which you and I both don't see any point in either.
Buying. It's not just us. No one sees any point in that one.
So don't get me wrong, I loved the concept of the 12-inch MacBook. I loved it because it was a netbook, wasn't it? The concept of it was great. I really wanted one for a long time.
I've seen some in person. My boss at a previous job had one, and he goes, "Actually, you know what? It's brilliant. It just does my email, my web browser, my office stuff. So all I need is perfect. Really light. I chuck it in the back. I don't even know it's there."
Exactly. I love that as a pure travel. It sounds perfect.
Yeah.
But if I if I look left and look at my iPad, that's got a keyboard. That's 12.9 inches. That does everything.
But the weight of that one with the new style, the new Magic Keyboard.
Yeah, they're quite heavy.
Heavy iPad.
I got to admit, my iPad is quite heavy. I don't know whether you've seen. It's not a light bit of kit, is it, by anybody's standards? I love the idea of it.
Yeah.
Just can't see the point of it. And this worries me a little bit with Apple. Do you remember when Steve Jobs came back? And basically, one of the things he did was clear the SKUs, wasn't it? Because Apple had so many different SKUs of machines that it was just overwhelming. And we ended up with a real clean, for a few years at least, a clean product lineup. We now seem to be it now starts to be diluted a bit. I think they're almost having
definitely.
It's getting to the point where there's too many machines. But look, like we often say, this is a weekly tech rant. I'm having a rant. But there we go. Well, we'll see. Talking of which, though, actually, on a funny kind of point, those 12-inch MacBooks. I can get it. Yeah.
Yes.
They came in several different flavors. If you recall, they had kind of like low end i3, didn't they? All the way up to an i7. Which they weren't. They were the weird. I can't remember what they called them. They were the M series, weren't they? Of Core M or whatever they were called.
Yeah.
Have you? I don't know if you've seen recently how much they go for on what's it called?
eBay.
eBay. But they're not cheap.
No.
They are,
They are.
they're still like 200 plus, 300 plus for a machine that's 5 years old.
Wow.
But is that just Apple tax? I wonder some days.
Yeah, I think so.
But anyway, on that note, it's probably a good place for us to wrap up for tonight.
Yep.
We'll be back next week, hopefully back within the usual show parameters. A couple of weeks' time, we will probably be moving to a probably 2-weekly gap. We might have a week clear due to some summer holidays, and the weather being good. But we'll announce that in the coming weeks or so. But on that note, I've been Jay.
I've been Carl. Have a good evening, all.
Hang on a minute. I forgot the housekeeping.
Oh.
Well.
Oh, what have you done?
Stop the music, my man. Stop the music. Right. This, because, it is. I wasn't going to do it. I thought we could edit this back in, but I was like, hang on a minute. So,
hang on.
Taking a step back, yes, you can find us, of course, online at techrant.online for all of our show notes and information. And, of course, we're on Twitter at weeklytechrant. And, of course, you can find us wherever you get your podcast from. So please give us a share, tell your friends about us. And, again, a special hello to those of podcast listeners who we've met in person over the last few weeks. Right, then. On that note, then, let's hit the exit music.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Are you sure you finished? Okay,
I'm sure.
go for
Are
it.
you sure?
I'm sure.